In a mansion, overflowing with power and influence, everyone looked at the CEO's daughter, but no one really saw her. They saw a problem to be managed, a disruption. But the new maid, who had nothing, saw a lonely little girl who just needed a friend. And when she knelt down and asked 4 simple words, "Will you dance with me?" she didn't just break the rules. She shattered the spell that held a father and daughter captive. This is the story of how one simple dance changed everything. Just 1 week earlier, Alistair Finch and Clara Rosales lived in completely different universes. Alistair's world was all glass towers and billion-dollar deals, where his worth was splashed across the covers of business magazines. His mansion felt less like a home and more like a monument to his success. So vast and pristine, it echoed with a silence that no amount of money could fill. Clara's world was a tiny apartment that always smelled of her mom's herbal teas. Her life was a frantic race against a mountain of medical bills, each one a reminder of why she desperately needed this job at the Finch estate. The pay was a lifeline. As she stepped through the massive front doors for the first time, the marble entryway was so grand it made her feel like she could disappear. She was met by Mrs. Higgins, the head housekeeper, a woman who seemed as starched and rigid as her uniform. Her tour of the estate wasn't a welcome, it was a warning. "We have a standard here, Miss Rosales," she said, her voice completely flat. "You are here to clean, to serve, and to be invisible." Clara just nodded, her throat tight. She wasn't afraid of hard work, but as Mrs. Higgins led her through the silent, museum-like rooms, a chill ran down her spine. It was the coldness of a house that had forgotten how to be a home. Alistair Finch was the master of his universe, a titan who commanded boardrooms with a single look. But inside his own house, he was a stranger. His 8-year-old daughter, Lily, was like a quiet ghost in a house of shadows, always on the edge of his vision. Clara saw it on her very first day. She watched Alistair stride through the foyer with his phone glued to his ear, barking orders about a merger. Lily stood near the grand staircase, holding up a drawing of a bright, smiling sun. "Daddy, look," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Not now, Lily," Alistair said, his eyes already on the next deal. He disappeared into his study, the door clicking shut, leaving Lily alone, her drawing slowly sinking to her side. Later, Mrs. Higgins explained the house rules regarding Lily. "Mr. Finch's daughter can get overwhelmed," she said in a clinical tone. "The best approach, the one Mr. Finch insists on, is to give her space. Don't disrupt her routines. It's just easier for everyone if we let her be." Clara quickly realized this policy was just a nicer way of saying ignore her. The staff moved around Lily as if she were a delicate piece of furniture they might break. They avoided her eyes. They stepped right over the neat lines of colorful blocks she had arranged on the floor. While many children on the autism spectrum are diagnosed early, the core challenge is often helping them connect, not leaving them isolated. But here, in her own home, Lily wasn't being supported. She was being managed. And Clara's heart ached every time she saw the little girl humming to herself in a corner, completely alone in a house full of people. A week later, the silent mansion was transformed. The rooms buzzed with the chatter of the city's most powerful people. It was Alistair Finch's annual corporate gala. Men in sharp suits and women in glittering dresses floated through the ballroom, their laughter bouncing off the high ceilings. And in a small alcove, half hidden by a heavy velvet curtain, sat Lily. She was in a pretty pink dress, with her hands pressed hard over her ears, trying to block out the overwhelming noise. Her body rocked back and forth, a tiny ship trying to find its anchor in a storm. Clara watched from across the room as she refilled a tray. She saw person after person walk right past the alcove, their eyes sliding past the little girl as if she wasn't there. They saw the CEO's daughter, the one they'd been warned about, and they just kept their distance. A problem. An inconvenience. Alistair was in his element, smiling, shaking hands, and closing deals without an office. He glanced toward the alcove once, A flicker of something. Was it worry? But then a colleague clapped him on the shoulder, and the moment was gone. He was a king in his castle, totally unaware that his princess was locked in a tower of loneliness right in front of him. Clara's hands tightened on the silver tray. Mrs. Higgins' words echoed in her head. Don't engage, don't disrupt. But then she looked at Lily's face, at the tiny tremor in her lips, and the rules didn't matter anymore. This wasn't about a job. This was about a child who was drowning in plain sight, and everyone was pretending not to see. Setting her tray down, Clara made a choice. She started walking toward the alcove. As Clara got closer, she moved slowly, gently. She didn't stand over Lily. Instead, she knelt, bringing herself down to her level, the fabric of her simple uniform brushing the cold marble floor. Lily didn't look up. Her whole world focused on escaping the party's sensory assault. The band was playing a soft waltz, but the melody was lost in the sea of chatter. Clara spoke, her voice a whisper just for the two of them. I love this song. It makes me want to sway like a tree in the wind. Lily's rocking faltered. Just for a second. She peeked at Clara from under her lashes, her curiosity winning out over her distress. Clara offered a small, real smile. She didn't push. She just waited. Then she held out her hand, palm up. It was an invitation, not a command. Will you dance with me? The world seemed to stop. Lily looked at Clara's hand, then back at her face. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, hesitantly, she placed her small hand in Clara's. A connection was made, a bridge built across a gulf of silence. They didn't go to the center of the ballroom. They stayed right there, in their own little world. Clara started to sway, leading Lily in a simple, rocking dance. It wasn't a performance. It was a shared secret. Lily's feet shuffled, clumsy at first, but then she found the rhythm. The anxious hum she'd been making slowly turned into a soft, happy tune. And then it happened. A smile. It started small, but it grew until it lit up her entire face, a breathtaking smile of pure joy. Just then, a sharp voice sliced through the air. What do you think you're doing? Mrs. Higgins stood there, her face a mask of thunderous fury. You were given explicit instructions. Alistair saw the commotion from across the ballroom. He saw his head housekeeper confronting the new maid and felt a flash of anger, a scene. He couldn't afford a scene on a night this important. He started over, his jaw set, ready to put a stop to it. But then he stopped. From where he stood, he could see past Mrs. Higgins. He could see his daughter, and he saw her smile. It wasn't the polite, fleeting smile he sometimes managed to get for a photo. This was different. This was sunshine after a hurricane. It was a look of such genuine, unburdened happiness that it hit him like a physical blow. He froze, hidden by a marble pillar, and just watched. He saw the easy, pure connection between Lily and this maid he barely recognized. He saw Lily swaying peacefully to the music, not with the anxious energy he was so used to. Then he heard the maid's quiet, firm voice cut through his thoughts. She's a child, not a problem to be managed, Clara said, her voice ringing with a truth that shot straight through Alistair's soul. She was lonely. The word echoed in the sudden silence of his mind. He'd given his daughter everything money could buy. The best therapists, private tutors, a house the size of a city block. He told himself he built his empire for her future. But he had never actually given her himself. He'd thrown money at her condition, but he had never just sat on the floor and been with her in her loneliness. A wave of guilt so powerful it nearly buckled his knees washed over him. Every "not now, Lily," every missed moment, every time he chose a phone call over her outstretched hand came rushing back. He suddenly saw his magnificent home not as a symbol of success, but as a gilded cage. And with sickening clarity, he realized he wasn't just the owner of the cage, he had been one of its keepers. This young woman, with nothing to her name, had shown his daughter more humanity in 5 minutes than he had in years. The dance wasn't just a dance, it was an awakening. And for the first time, Alistair Finch truly saw the depth of his failure as a father. The last guest was gone, and the mansion was silent again. The next morning, Clara was called to Alistair's study. She walked in with her head held high, fully expecting to be fired. Mrs. Higgins was already there, standing beside Alistair's desk, with a smug look on her face. Clara braced herself. She wasn't going to apologize for being kind. Alistair sat behind his enormous desk, but for the first time, he didn't look powerful. He just looked tired, broken. He ignored Mrs. Higgins and fixed his eyes on Clara. His voice was low, thick with emotion. "Mrs. Higgins tells me you directly disobeyed a household rule." "Yes, sir, I did," Clara said, her voice steady. Alistair nodded slowly. Then he turned to the head housekeeper. "Mrs. Higgins, your services are no longer required. Your methods are outdated and unacceptable. You're dismissed." Mrs. Higgins' jaw dropped. She stammered, speechless, before turning and storming out of the room. Alistair's gaze returned to Clara, his eyes filled with a deep gratitude. He said, "You didn't just dance with my daughter. You held up a mirror, and you forced me to see what I've been refusing to. You woke me up." He took a shaky breath. "In building a world for her, I forgot to be in it with her. Thank you." He leaned forward. "I'm not asking you to be a maid anymore, Miss Rosales. I'd like you to be a companion for Lily. But more than that," he admitted, his pride finally crumbling, "I need you to teach me. Please, teach me how to be a father to my own daughter." Slowly, the Finch mansion began to change. The heavy silence was replaced by soft music and sometimes the sound of Lily's laughter. The rules were rewritten, not in a staff handbook, but in small moments of connection. A few weeks later, Clara walked past the living room and paused. On the floor, in the middle of a sprawling kingdom of colorful blocks, sat Alistair Finch. His phone was nowhere in sight. His entire world was focused on Lily, who was carefully placing the final block on top of their magnificent castle. He wasn't closing a deal. He was building a memory. Alistair looked up and saw Clara watching. He gave her a small, grateful nod. Clara smiled and quietly walked away, leaving the father and daughter to their newfound world. Because in the end, it wasn't a CEO who saved his daughter. It was a maid who showed him how. She had shown a man who had everything that the only thing truly worth holding on to was his daughter's hand. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of the incredible power of kindness.